John Stones has allegedly accused Spence of deliberately sabotaging England's defensive drills at their training camp in North Carolina, sparking a confrontation so explosive that Thomas Tuchel had to physically separate them days before the World Cup opener against Serbia. This wasn't just some disagreement. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't the press blowing things out of proportion. This is serious. Nothing like this has ever been seen days before the start of a World Cup. And there's a detail the FA still hasn't confirmed publicly. Coaching staff allegedly had to remind both John Stones and Spence of media protocols immediately after the session to prevent leaks, and the worst still hasn't come out. Over the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly what happened and why this turns England's World Cup upside down. When this happens days before the World Cup, it's not just any problem. Thomas Tuchel is scrambling to finalize his starting lineup for June 11th. The dressing room is split down the middle, and England's right-back position has become a toxic crisis that threatens everything the Three Lions have built heading into this tournament. And behind the scenes, it's worse than it looks. Here's what happened. It all started during a closed defensive session at the Charlotte Training Complex on May 28th. The drill was designed to simulate counterattacks, with Spence positioned at right back. According to sources close to the squad, Spence allegedly jogged back as attacking runners exploited the space behind him. John Stones, covering centrally, had to drift wide 3 times in succession to cover the vacant channel. On the 4th breakdown, Stones reportedly stopped play himself. He pointed at the empty space and gestured sharply toward Spence. That's when everything changed. Witnesses claim John Stones walked directly across the pitch, standing less than a meter from Spence with his hands raised. Multiple sources describe Stones using the word sabotage and referencing professionalism. Spence allegedly responded by stepping forward, chest to chest, before Declan Rice and coaching staff physically separated them. The drill was abandoned. Players stood frozen for several seconds before Thomas Tuchel blew the whistle and dismissed the group 20 minutes early. The atmosphere in the dressing room afterward was described as icy. But this didn't come out of nowhere. However, the real problem had started days earlier. Spence has allegedly been frustrated since learning he was third choice behind Trent Alexander-Arnold and Tino Livramento, despite Alexander-Arnold's recent injury opening a pathway. Thomas Tuchel reportedly favored Livramento's versatility, fueling Spence's belief that senior players were influencing team selection. John Stones, meanwhile, has privately expressed concerns about defensive cohesion, particularly after England conceded late goals in friendlies against Brazil and Belgium. What almost nobody noticed was this. Spence was allegedly caught on a hot mic during a recovery session questioning whether the old guard should still dictate tactics. Tactical staff allegedly noted Spence's body language during video sessions, where he appeared disengaged when John Stones offered feedback. And hold on, because the most controversial detail I've saved for the end. Inside the dressing room, opinions split sharply. Veterans like Jordan Pickford and Harry Kane allegedly back John Stones, emphasizing tournament experience and defensive reliability. Younger players, including Kobbie Mainoo and Morgan Rogers, reportedly sympathize with Spence, viewing the incident as emblematic of limited opportunities. Thomas Tuchel's coaching staff has remained publicly silent, but sources suggest assistant Anthony Barry privately urged Tuchel to resolve the issue before it leaks. The FA is monitoring the situation closely, concerned about external distractions. On social media, fans are divided. Some defend Stones' standards. Others accuse him of bullying. The English press has begun questioning whether Thomas Tuchel has lost control of the squad. England's tactical preparations are now overshadowed by questions about team unity. Thomas Tuchel faces a critical decision before announcing his starting 18th on June 9th. And the clock is ticking. FIFA's replacement window closes June 5th, meaning any drastic roster changes must happen within days. The next closed training session on May 30th will be closely watched for any signs of reconciliation or escalation. Now Thomas Tuchel is caught between two bad decisions. If he sides with John Stones and benches Jed Spence, he risks alienating younger players and losing squad depth for a tournament spanning 7 potential matches. But if he publicly backs Spence or downplays the incident, he undermines Stones' authority and sends a message that standards are negotiable. Either decision could fracture the dressing room days before the opener against Serbia. And here's where the story takes another turn. Fresh reports suggest Thomas Tuchel had already planned to start Tino Livramento before the incident, but delayed the announcement to avoid appearing reactive. Sources claim video footage from the session exists and could surface if the dispute escalates publicly. England's native defensive structure is in crisis, and the man who was supposed to anchor it just accused a teammate of sabotage. Now Thomas Tuchel has to decide which player he can afford to lose. And look, this is far from over. This is the information circulating so far. Over the next few hours, new details should trickle out, and they could turn this whole story upside down. So for you, was John Stones right to demand accountability? Or did he cross the line by publicly humiliating a younger teammate? Let us know in the comments below. And if you don't want to miss the next major development, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because when this fully breaks, you'll want to be the first to know, not the last.